Stephanie, would you mind calling the roll for attendance, please?
Yes, ma'am. Chair Burns, Dr. Chanel Jones, Pastor Rick Jones, Dr. James Ford, Crystal Jackson, Pastor Rich Nathan, Kyle Strickland, congratulations, and Mary Younger.
Yes, Board Member Strickland is not with us today. He has a new family addition, so he is taking time off. So we appreciate and wish him well with that. All right, first, minutes from the previous meeting. Hopefully everyone has had an opportunity to look at those. Did anyone have any additions, edits, suggestions, or otherwise? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to accept the minutes as provided.
So moved.
Okay, may I have a second, please? Second. All in favor of accepting the minutes, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries. Thank you. Now I'll turn it over to the Inspector General for an update.
First, I want to say good afternoon to everyone. I hope everyone had a great holiday. This being December is our last meeting for the year, so I wanted to wish everybody again happy holidays, happy New Year's. And before I get into our update, wanted to acknowledge that congratulations to General Counsel Tia Ross for being our new city council member. This will also be her last meeting with us, so definitely I'm going to miss seeing you sit with me, but then we'll have our new chair sliding on over. So
That's why the chairs are on wheels.
So really appreciate that. We're going to get into the update for the monthly report.
I can't see.
Do you want to go over?
I just need to get my glasses. I really can't see.
Just bringing up the report. There we go.
Yes.
Thank you. This is the monthly report for October. We did send it out for everyone on Monday if anyone had any additional questions. And then even after I go over the overview, if anyone has any questions, please feel free just to either send those to me. So just kind of going over the monthly report is going to be for October. There is, this is how it's going to look. We have a table of contents that should give you like a little bit of an overview of what we're putting in the report. A lot of this is based on a lot of the information that the board had asked for. So some of the highlights going into, if you see the citizen complaint stats we had for the month of October, there was, can you hear me? Because I'm kind of, I can probably make this a little bit bigger. Let's see, right here. Okay, is that better? Okay, so for the month of October, we had a total of 104 complaints that came in. 70% of those mainly come in through the hotline. If you look at the breakdown of citizen complaints that came in, we had the breakdown for citizen complaints that came in. Although for the month of October, just understanding these are the total number of source of complaints that come in. When we do the breakdown of citizen complaints, this is the breakdown that talks about the close at intake, open into investigations, pending, and board initiated. So the close can also include investigations that may be pending. It can also include additional information, and if you look down here where it says, please note chart B and C, it just gives you an explanation as to why, if you're thinking the total of 104 and the total of 145 doesn't match, it just gives you a little bit of explanation as to why. But as you can see, the close at intake was 121 that we closed at intake. We opened 20 investigations in the month of October. Going into the citizen complaint closed at intake, so now we're looking at the 121 that were closed. Just gives you a little overview of the reason for some of them were closed. The majority would be insufficient information to proceed with an investigation. The other would be preliminary investigation found no police misconduct. 43 were referred to other agencies. Going down a little further, if we look into citizen complaint investigations open, closed, and on administration hold, you can see that we opened again 20. We closed 42. This is all for the month of October, and there are 18 that are still on administrative hold. Looking at the breakdown of allegations for the cases that were closed in October, you can see that the total was 161 allegations that were investigated. I highlighted some of the investigations. I highlighted the category of allegations that we investigated that were our biggest ones. 55 being actions taken, not taken. 16 being rude, discourteous, and or profanity. 23 being force, and another 23 being search and seizure. Those were like the highest, but still there is a breakdown if you want to see some of the other allegations that were investigated. If you look down at Table F, what we did is we took those allegations that were investigated and we broke them down by precinct. So now you're able to look at the precinct and see the number of allegations, again, by precinct that were investigated. Looking at Table G, and you know, I'll go back up because I did highlight. So when we look at the allegations investigated by precinct, Precinct 5 had 33 allegations that we investigated. Precinct 11 had 20, and Precinct 12 had 23. You can also look and see, I mean, if you want to look at number 9, it had 19. Going again into Table G, it says investigation disposition per allegation. So what we did is we broke this down so you're able to see how many allegations closed in October again. 18 were exonerated. You had 17 sustained misconduct, and there were 114 allegations unfounded. We broke it down and gave you a chart if you wanted to reference a chart. And then H, we broke it down to show you sustained allegations by category. I think that was one of the things the board had asked for. So now if you want to look at the allegations which we sustained, which were 17, then we broke it down in categories to see what they were. You had 7. The highest was rude and discourteous. There were no force-related actions taken, not taken was 2. Violations of police rules and order were 3. I'm just moving on to the next. Again, what we also did is we also broke those sustained allegations down by precinct. So if you want to see per precinct the allegations that were sustained, you're able to see what precincts those allegations were involved in also. And then at the end of the report, it says DIG report review. So for the month of October, which most likely is some of the cases that the board will be voting on today, the board, we closed, well, for the month of October, the board had 51 reports. And the rest of the report, we did summaries. So a lot of these should be cases that, these are cases that were closed in the month of October. Here's the summary. You'll be able to look as time goes on, you'll be able to see what the you'll always know what our disposition is because we closed it, but you'll be able to see the board's dispositions. Those will be updated as we get as the board votes on those. Keep in mind, the reports that are closed go over to CPD for their review, so most likely it's going to be anywhere from from the time that the board votes to close and those reports go over to CPD, it's usually about a good 4 to 6 months. It is being a little bit less, which is great, but it's usually a good 4 to 6 months before we're going to get a finding, and we'll be able to update that. But when we do the annual report and we report out on all of the cases that have been reviewed in 2025, a lot of these fields involving CPD will most likely have some answers. And then anything most likely from October on might be kind of blank because we don't have any feedback from them yet. So that's just a little overview. Are there any questions before I close this regarding the information? Nope. Okay. And again, you want me to close? Oh, that's thank you. And I was going to say, I know we sent it out yesterday. Please feel free, if you have some additional questions, please feel free to email those to us, and we'll try to provide you with an answer as soon as we're able to. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Inspector General. All right, next up, we will have a review of cases of cases assigned in November. First, I'd like to hear from Committee 1.
Okay. Is this on?
You press the button.
Press the button.
There you
Okay.
go.
Might need to
Pull it up?
move it closer.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So, Committee 1 is represented today by Dr. Jones and myself. Mr. Strickland is, I think, taking family leave. So I'll just break these cases down into 3 buckets again. The first, in terms of making motions, the first concerns those cases where we agreed with the DIG's findings. The second is going to be motions to accept the DIG's additional, their own self-initiated recommendations, and the third is a case that we had a question about. So let me begin with Committee 1 agreed with the DIG's findings in cases 586, 648, 652, 669, 678, 684, 713, 718, 768, I'll be adding a DIG charge, but we agreed with their findings in 768, 772, 784, and 805, and just like with 768, there is an additional DIG charge in 805. The discussion item concerns case 709. So I wanted to move to accept the DIG's findings in 586, 648, 652, 669, 678, 684, 713, 718, 768, 772, 784, and 805.
Second.
Okay, I've got a first and a second. Stephanie, I don't know if you saw Dr. Jones give the second. You're welcome. All right. Anyone have any questions or discussion regarding those enumerated cases? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor of accepting those recommendations, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motions carry.
Then in case 768 and 805, the DIG added additional charges, and our committee reviewed those and agreed with the DIG's additional charges in 768 and 805. So I move to accept the DIG's findings.
Second.
Okay, again, we've got a first and a second. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, I'd call the vote. All in favor of accepting those recommendations as given, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motions carry.
And then there was case number 709. Mr. Tobias was very helpful in responding to a few questions we had, but let me just give you the basics of the case. This was a case in which an individual, the complainant, was sitting in his car at a gas station, and he was approached by police officers for loitering because he was sitting in his car at the gas station, but he wasn't patronizing the business. They discovered that after approaching him and talking with him that he was smoking weed in the car and that he was handcuffed. He alleged that the officers were racially profiling him, and they took his keys. The DIG found in both cases, their conclusion was that his allegations were unfounded. The troubling aspect of the case was this discussion that he was loitering at the gas station. Mr. Tobias said that officers can go up to a car and engage in conversation with the individual, so I just accept you know more about this than I do. But I was just troubled by the use of the term loitering, since I don't think it's a thing. That is, it doesn't have any legal efficacy. It's unconstitutional. It's unconstitutionally vague. And so I just wondered how this is making its way both into our cases as well as, I don't know what the police training is. Are officers trained to stop people for loitering? I can understand them stopping people for smoking weed in a car, which is against Ohio law, even if you're in a parked car. I can understand them going up to investigate suspicious behavior. It was this term loitering that shows up several times in the case. I don't know what that is. You know, leaning on a lamppost. What are you doing? It doesn't give notice of what you're doing that's wrong. So I just wondered how it made its way into this case and whether that's something that police officers are trained in to, investigate.
I can add a few comments similar to what I put in the email to you. I would agree with you that loitering in a general sense is not a criminal activity. It's not a criminal term. Loitering for solicitation, as I indicated in the email, would be.
Yes.
So loitering is just one part of a larger picture. So in terms of, you were asking about what officers are trained in, they're trained to look for suspicious behavior, people making, furtive type gestures. But I also use the phrase in my email to you, totality of the circumstances. You're absolutely correct. You can't go over to somebody and criminally charge them with loitering just because they're leaning on a lamppost or sitting in a gas station parking lot. But when you combine being in a space for an extended period of time where you're not engaging in behavior that you would reasonably expect to be taking place at that particular location, like going into the snack shop to get food or drinks, not pumping gas, and you're parked in a spot at a gas station and an officer's made 3 or 4 or 5 loops around over an 8 or 10 or 12 minute period of time and the person's still there, that combined with the officer's familiarity with the area, if it's a high crime or high drug use or sale area, if they have familiarity with the person themselves, that they've got a prior criminal history or record, all of those things would be taken into totality in terms of whether they have some type of reasonable suspicion to detain and search somebody. I also indicated to you, any officer can go up to anyone at any time if the interaction is consensual, meaning they can go over and say hello to somebody and engage somebody in conversation. And if somebody willingly wants to consent to engage in that conversation with the officer, they can, or they can say, I have no interest in talking to you, go away.
I had no problem with that. The loitering thing just seems, for me, to just dissolve, even after your explanation. Maybe, the concern I had was that, sitting in a parked car, the person may live in a high crime area. That's not against the law to sit in a
Right.
car.
I mean, the officers didn't even need to articulate that if they didn't want to in this situation. They could have just walked up to the person and engaged them in conversation.
And that was acceptable to me,
Yeah.
based on your explanation.
Yeah.
I just wondered why this term showed up repeatedly, like you're hanging out.
Right.
Okay, that used to be a thing, but I don't think it is any longer, is it? I mean, you both know a lot.
Yeah.
I took this 40 years ago.
If
So-
somebody's in an area where you would have some reasonable expectation that the type of activity they would be engaging in that area should take X number of minutes or hours, and they are there for a period of time that is beyond what is expected, again, that's just one factor that they would put into the totality of the circumstances assessment.
And it's my understanding that the call for service was for a suspicious person, and the officer spent a little bit of time just kind of sitting and watching what was happening on the scene before
I think they went
making a
around the block a
determination.
couple times, right? So
Okay.
if somebody at the gas station called and said, this dude's been in the car hanging out in the parking lot for an extended period of time, we're not sure what he's up to, we're concerned, that would be also factored in
Right.
to the assessment, coupled with the officer then circling for a period of time and noticing they're just sitting there, and then all the other factors that I mentioned.
I just wanted to mention that the individual was sitting at a gas pump, and he was not pumping gas, so that was,
And if if this was a trespass case, for example, if they said, this is private property, you can't just sit here, I would understand that. If, I want to make sure that officers are not stopping people for something that is not a crime.
But they didn't stop him. It's not like they pulled his car over.
Right.
They just approached him in a space that he already was at.
Pursuant to a
Well,
call.
the reason.
Pursuant to a call.
Right.
It feels close to racial profiling, in the sense that what we have is a person who is sitting there doing nothing.
The issue I would have would be if the individual said, am I free to leave? And the officer said no. That would be some type of a detention where you'd have to be able to articulate some type of reasonable suspicion that the officer may not have had at the time. But in this instance, initially he walked up, it was consensual, and then they observed additional behaviors.
The additional behavior was cause for detention. He's not allowed to smoke weed in his car. I'm just troubled by the use of the term loitering.
Sure.
Okay, and I just wondered if officers, during their training program, are they taught to observe loitering? I mean, what,
I think they're trained to look for suspicious behaviors, furtive gestures, things of that nature.
or somebody who's dealing or reaching into their pocket and handing something that they can't see. I get that. It just, that this ran through the DIG's report, and I just wondered why it did. I understood your response to me, but I just was troubled by the use of the term loitering, because that was always a basis for racially profiling people that, were black. I mean, there was repeated arrest for loitering. So I just wonder why this is showing up in a report in 2025.
I think so. The term is still used fairly common, particularly when you have business owners. They will put like a no loitering sign.
Private property.
That is fine. I think it is just a term. I think at the end of the day, regardless of the term that's being used, the basis by which the officer is going to be disciplined is whether or not someone's constitutional violations were violated. And so you would be looking at, did that officer have reasonable suspicion to stop and detain? And then if you need further probable cause and or something further to search, you would be looking at that regardless of what the term is for, what the term is being used for. The DIG should have just been looking at what are the constitutional rights that that individual has, and did the officer violate those rights in engaging with that person?
Attorney Ross, can you remind me, we had a discussion a while back, I think it was last year, specifically about pretextual stops with jaywalking. And wasn't there an adjustment or a new policy, offhand I can't recall what it was, about policy and protocol when jaywalking is the underlying thing that kind of draws the eye of law enforcement?
I would have to go back and look because it's escaping me as well.
Okay.
And which again, most of the time, and you have to correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, in Columbus, if it's going to have to be loitering in the aid of some other criminal activity, which is likely the same thing that we're talking about with regard to jaywalking as well. If it's loitering in the aid of drug possession or drug selling or solicitation, obviously, and it sounds like Pastor Rich, you're okay with that. You just want to make sure that loitering in and of itself is not a pretext for something else. What Rob is saying is constitutionally, an officer, regardless of what you're doing, has the ability to walk up to you and engage in a consensual encounter. And as soon as it becomes non-consensual, unless the officer has some other reasonable suspicion or probable cause to continue that detaining, then that officer has to leave you alone. And what it sounds like is the officer, one, got a call for a suspicious person, so that was used in starting to look for an individual at the gas station in the first place. I would be concerned if officer was just there kind of engaging with that person for no other reason other than what the officer felt like was suspicious, but the officer got a call. So officer is able to respond to that call. Then officer engaged in some sort of at least investigatory process to determine whether or not that call had any validity. And then it sounds like pursuant to a totality of the circumstances, there was at least reason for the officer to approach the individual and at least ask a couple of questions. And in that approaching, officer was able to identify a crime that was being committed. So it's always, I think, is going to be a very factual determination about whether or not an individual is, or an officer is engaging in some sort of profiling versus using the tools that they have available to them to investigate a particular call for service.
Attorney Ross, would you be willing to look back to whatever
Yes,
that,
I would
that
be.
specific jaywalking policy was that we
Yes.
discussed? Because I feel like if that's where we might be headed for a recommendation, then being on track with whatever language was utilized then is probably helpful.
Happy to.
Thank you.
Would you like that today?
Sure, if you can. If not, then I understand your predecessor might be, your successor, I mean, might be who gets it to us.
We will
but-
make, the city attorney's office will make sure you get a response to
But that would be helpful because I feel like it
Absolutely.
sits in a similar space.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Great. Well, yeah. So I didn't have a necessary problem with the ultimate finding, so move to accept the DIG's finding in case 709 with my own caveat that I don't like the term loitering.
Fair enough.
Fair.
Okay, we've got a first. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of accepting the recommendation as given, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, Committee 1. Does that dispose of all of your cases?
It does.
All right. Committee 2.
Okay, I'm going to go through the cases that we concurred with the Inspector General, and then we have one that, we had several questions, reviewed the BWC, and then Mr. Tobias helped us with several questions, so I'll set that one aside. As the case, these are the cases that we did concur with the Inspector General. Case numbers 25-0625, 0586, 0639, 0658, 0662, 0677, 0707, 0715, 0789, 0790, 0807, 0841, 0842, 0907. Okay, did everybody hear me? Or would you like for me to start over? Okay. You want me to start over?
Please, because
I'll do it over. All right. These are the cases that we did concur with the Inspector General. Case numbers 25 dash, and then I'll read the numbers. 0625, 0639, 0658, 0662, 0677, 0707, 0715, 0789, 0790, 0807, 0841, 0842, 0907, and then one from last week was 2025, last month, 2025-0586. These are the cases that we did concur with the Inspector General, so at this point, we would move to accept these.
I've got a first. May I have a second, please? Okay, anyone have any questions or discussion? All right, all in favor of accepting the recommendations as presented by Committee 2, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motions carry.
The next case is 2025-0628. Our committee did concur with the findings of the Inspector General, but the Inspector General also had two additional allegations. The first allegation was the DIG found evidence that Level 1 and Level 4 use of forces, that when the report was done, the Level 1 and Level 4 were used, let's see here, DIG found evidence that Level 1 and 4 were used. When the report was done, only Level 1 was reported, but they indicated that the Level 1 and Level 4 were used. And they found that this was, I'm sorry, let me read that one from here. I can't read my own writing. Okay, DIG allegation, number 1. A review of the BWC for allegation number 1 showed Level 1 use of force and Level 4 use of force was used to gain control of the individual, but only Level 1 use of force was reported on the report. Per CPD policy, all uses of force shall be reported consistently with policy. Therefore, it is recommended that this allegation be closed with sustained. In this particular instance, our committee had an opportunity to view the BWC, and after reviewing it, we do concur with the Inspector General on this particular allegation of sustaining. As to the second allegation, the Inspector General found that the CPD officer interviewed was interviewed, and he was untruthful on 2 occasions per BWC footage. Per policy, personnel are to be honest at all times, and thus this is against policy. We, of course, viewed the BWC, and we concur with the Inspector General that this particular officer was dishonest. So that is done. However, our committee had concern with this particular case, but not specifically with the outcome of the allegations from the individual and from the Inspector General. Those we did concur, but something else that happened in the report. So we got in touch with Mr. Tobias several times, and this is what our concern is. Our committee had a concern with the situation as to the officer who allegedly lied as to the use of force. He was evaluated by his sergeant and by a lieutenant as to the final outcome. After viewing the body cam, we were not comfortable with with what the sergeant and the lieutenant with their evaluation. We're not comfortable with saying that the sergeant and the lieutenant were being dishonest, but we're having a hard time reconciling the paperwork with what the BWC shows. We would believe that it would be fruitful for CPD to take a second look at the BWC and take a look at that level of force used by this particular officer F and reevaluate the BWC and reevaluate his own evaluation of the situation, because his own situation was evaluated after he was interviewed by the Inspector General, and they deemed him to be dishonest twice. So, and also, the sergeant himself said in the report that he would have to speak to the officer himself to determine the officer's intent and get more clarification to determine that level of force. So by the officer's own words, when he was interviewed by the Inspector General, he believed that a deeper dive needed to be done in order to make a determination, but it was not done. So our committee would like more investigation and a deeper evaluation by CPD into the level of force used by this particular officer, because the body cam might show level 4 rather than level 1. So we move at this time that the board consider that the chief and the safety director further review the level of force used by Officer F in this particular situation.
Do we have any questions?
Yeah, I'm just, could you clarify, Mary, you're accepting the Inspector General's findings.
Yes.
Did the Inspector General accept the findings of the body cam?
The Inspector General found, yes, they did, because number one, they found that the officer was dishonest, that he lied twice. And that was per body cam.
And so you reviewed the body cam,
Yes, I did.
and you concur with the Inspector General's.
Here's, if I could
Yeah.
elaborate on that a little bit. And I want to say that Mr. Tobias helped me to,
Yeah, I can provide some additional clarity if you like.
good. Oh, okay, well, I'll say it, and then maybe he can help. Sometimes when you view body cam, and even the lieutenant said this, no, the sergeant, when you view it frame by frame, it sometimes gives you the illusion that something is happening when it isn't happening. Can you, Mr. Tobias, so maybe that's why we're asking for a deeper dive into this, because viewing it looks like this officer makes contact twice with the face of the suspect. I mean, socks him in the face twice, which would be level 4. And the sergeant actually says that in the report, says, viewing it frame by frame, you could get that impression. And so, but he said, I would have to look to the intent of the officer and get clarification. And he did not do that, so that I'm thinking, well, maybe our committee thought maybe that should have been done. And the Inspector General did speak with the officers, with the officer involved, did speak with the sergeant involved, and I believe the lieutenant also. And they did sustain as to the level of force and to the dishonesty of the officer, per BWC, yes. Does that answer everything?
Did you have anything else?
You want to add?
I mean, I can clarify it maybe differently. There was an incident that occurred where, based on what was viewed on the body-worn camera, the officer struck the individual, I think once or twice in the face with a closed fist.
Yeah.
But the use of force report only indicated a level 1 use of force. It did not indicate a level 4 use of force, which would have been the punches. So during the investigation, the officer in question was questioned about that. And based on the responses that the officer gave, the IG felt that the officer was being dishonest in that the officer basically was saying, you know, my fist may have made contact with the individual's face, but it wasn't my intent to punch him. There was flailing around, resisting, everything was happening quickly. Our body parts may have made contact, but it wasn't my intent to punch him. That's why I did not put a level 4 use of force in the use of force report. The IG felt he was being dishonest and found, substantiated that. The concern here from what our conversations yielded was that a sergeant and a lieutenant were also involved kind of in the investigation and were interviewed by the IG. If I say anything incorrect, let me know. And during those interviews with the DIG, neither the sergeant nor the lieutenant would acknowledge that the body-worn camera video showed punches to the face or to the head.
Gotcha.
They were kind of talking around the issue, if you will, and were indicating that before they could reach any kind of conclusion about whether there was actually a level 4 use of force, I think what they said was something to the effect that, well, we could see how you would believe that would be a level, but we would need to find out the intent of the officer, have further interaction with the officer. We're not prepared at this time, at least during the interviews, to conclude that there was a level 4 use of force, and so we don't think the officer did anything wrong by omitting it from the use of force report. So I think what Board Member Younger and I talked about, what she was concerned about was maybe the board would not be ready or willing to go so far as to say that the sergeant and the lieutenant were lying or were dishonest in their interviews with the DIG, but that maybe some recommendation could come from the board to say, we're still uncomfortable with this. We can't reconcile what we're seeing on the body-worn camera footage versus what you're saying. And we'd really recommend to CPD that you take another look at this, reassess, reevaluate, because we believe there was a level 4 use of force, and based on the statements you've made during your interviews to the DIG, we're concerned.
Yes, sir. If I may add, so I just want to be clear, the sergeant and the lieutenant were not part of the officer's chain of command. Our investigator interviewed them for their expert opinion as part of the defensive tactics unit.
Okay.
To see about the levels of use of force level. And they were hesitant or did not want to speak because, or make a conclusion because they didn't have all the facts. You know, they didn't have, so that's why they weren't, willing to, make a, yes, that was a level 4 or whatever. They didn't, so that's why, I just wanted to be clear that, make sure that was clear. Yes, sir.
Board Member Nathan, I think what also sparked our interest in this is that the sergeant, I believe, I'm sorry, the sergeant, I believe, indicated that he wouldn't make a recommendation without knowing the intent of the officer and his state of mind. And our opinion was the state of mind and his intent had nothing to do with the actuality of the punch being twice. So that's why we wanted the investigation further into the deeper dive of this.
Very helpful.
So Committee 2, in addition to the motion you're making to accept the recommendation, are you making any other motions pertaining to?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we would move that that the chief and the safety director direct CPD to further review the level of force used in this particular case, 2025-0628, by Officer F as to level 1 or level 4, reviewing the body cam and reviewing also his own evaluation of his own situation.
Okay, so we've got two separate motions related to case number 25-0628. May I have a second, please? Okay, any other further discussions or questions?
I just have one. Board Member Younger, I don't know, I just want you to just clarify. There was the second motion that said you want him to evaluate his own evaluation, or did I misinterpret how you said that? Can you say that one more time?
Yeah, what I'm concerned with, and maybe you can help me clarify it. I'm concerned with the fact that he viewed the body cam in the Inspector General's office during his interview, and I viewed that body cam personally, and I'm concerned with what he saw and what I saw, and that's why we need this deeper dive. So my concern is that the Inspector General found that he was dishonest twice. And from what I saw, maybe that is the case, and I'm concerned about his dishonesty. So I would like for him to evaluate his perception of what he saw.
And by him, do you mean
The
Officer
officer,
F or also the sergeant and the
No,
lieutenant?
no, Officer F.
You don't want the lieutenant and the sergeant to
Well, they,
do a deeper dive?
they were
Because
giving their expert opinion, and they were not their chain of command, right? So I think Deputy Blunt, so I'm not sure how that would work, if they're allowed to do that, since they're not their direct chain of command, or, so I'm not sure I can do that.
Okay, I got you.
Does that help in any way? Or can you help me?
Well, I was trying to figure out how we could
How can we-
word it in
Yeah.
such a way, because this is my concern with this.
Yeah.
Is that I don't think an evaluation of oneself is going to render
Yeah.
anything different. And so that's why
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out how you could word it, but I'm not entirely sure, so.
And I'm not either. And I know what you're saying, and I had a hard time with it myself. But do you kind of understand what I'm wanting?
I think so. I think I see what you're wanting, yeah. And
But I'm
so
not
it's
sure
just-
if we're going to get there.
Yeah, captured in the motion as it currently is worded. It seems as though it's, you definitely want an additional review, but also some accountability for, or an investigation into whether or not there was an actual lie as it pertains to reviewing that body cam? And then if so, then some sort of consequence or something as
Yeah.
a result of that.
Yeah.
And I'm not certain, absent including in the motion, his own chain of command being admonished to review the body worn camera, that we will get like that level of self-reflection, right? I almost
Yeah.
feel like it's a need to, if we can all look at the video and say, you were obviously throwing punches, like intentionally pulling your arm back, throwing a punch. If you can't see that, then maybe your sergeant and your lieutenant need to take a look at this video and maybe retrain you on what level of force is, or something
Yeah.
of that nature. I'm
And
That was our
board
concern
member,
when the supervisory personnel couldn't agree with our findings. We think it's more of a deeper dive.
okay. Any other thoughts on amending the motion language?
I just got one more
Yep.
question.
board member Younger, wouldn't this be covered by the DIG's finding that the DIG's, if I understood what you said, found that they believed he lied? Is that the case?
Yes.
He was dishonest, correct?
He was dishonest. So,
Correct.
so then any discipline would be based on this finding that he was dishonest. So they would have to do what you're saying, that is, if he's been dishonest about claiming it's a level 1 use of force, and it was, the dishonesty is a fact base, that they're looking at it and saying, no, this wasn't level 1, it was level 4. You mischaracterized it. What else do we need?
Inspector, what do you think?
We're just trying to figure some things out. So what we're thinking, the board can probably make a recommendation. So if it's a use of force level 1, there is no use of force investigation that is conducted. So, or use of force report done. So since our ruling is that it was a use of force 4 that was done, part of what CPD would have done, had it been anything above that, they would have done a use of force investigation. And I believe the board can probably recommend, since you're agreeing with the fact that it was above the level 1, that maybe CPD conduct a use of force investigation into this incident that was not done by CPD.
Okay.
That would be good. So, all right.
Okay, so would you like to amend your initial motion to, we're still first motion to accept the initial recommendation, but amend the second motion to instead request that a use of force investigation be completed in light of the IG's findings?
Would that include a level 4 investigation be conducted?
Yes, because anything over a 1 would have required an investigation.
Yes, I would
Okay.
agree with that. Thank you.
All right, so we've got an amended now motion. Do we have a second to accept that amendment? Okay. Any other questions or discussion? All right, all in favor of accepting both motions as now stated, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motions carry. Does that dispose of all of your cases, Committee 2?
It does.
All right, turning over to Committee 3.
Committee 3, which is made up of Pastor Rick Jones and myself, met and unanimously agreed to move to accept the Inspector General's findings on case number 250638, 250645, 250649, 250665, 250674, 250743, 250745, 250775, 250783, 250785, 250800, 250808, and 250828. In addition, in case number 250645, the DIG had an additional charge of officer used profanity during the interaction with the complainant and a neighbor. He's also moved to accept the findings with the Inspector General. And then on 250800, there was 2 additional charges from the Department Inspector General. One was conduct of an officer being rude, saying shut up. And the second was a complainant had no insurance, but the officer did not ask the complainant for their insurance in this particular case. So we do agree, we did agree, and we moved to accept the findings of the Inspector General for the additional charges as well.
2 motions.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Okay. So we have motions to accept as given cases 25-0638, 0645, 0649, 0665, 0674, 0743, 0745, 0775, 0783, 0785, 0800, 0808, 0828, and additional IG motions on 0645 and 0800. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Okay, any other questions or discussions on those cases? Hearing none, all in favor of accepting those as recommended, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motions carry. All right, we will take a, we'll say a 13-minute break, come back at 10 after. For board members, you all should have received in your inboxes before the meeting a draft of a policy for virtual meetings, which would allow subcommittee or committees to meet virtually. If you have not had a chance to take a look at that, please use your break time to do so if you don't mind. And so that way we can have a discussion and see what next steps we might want to take on that draft policy. Thank you.
Thanks for that help. Thank you. Level 4.
before the meeting. Hopefully you were able to take a look at it now. Does anyone have, well, first, I'll just make a general announcement. So the policy that we discussed at our last meeting was pursuant to Ohio law within the revised code that now allows boards and commissions and committees to meet virtually, provided that the board have a policy that provides that we can do that. So Mr. Tobias has drafted a policy for us. That was distributed to each of the board members. Dr. Jones and I took a look at it, did little minor changes and adjustments to it, and the final version is what you all have. The one section I will call your attention to is Section 10. That is probably the one piece that is going to be most relevant for discussion. And Section 10 is pertaining to the minutes of our meetings and whether our meetings will be recorded. So if you remember at our last meeting, we discussed either taking meeting minutes, which I know committees have been doing in your various forms. I know Committee 1 has a little checklist form, and like they take their attendance that way and record their votes that way. The alternative version is to record committee meetings and have those recordings be your minutes. I would like to open the floor for anyone to give some thoughts on what you think about that, and if you have any thoughts on the policy draft in a larger sense.
I'll just go first. In terms of the policy, it's a long time coming, so glad we finally have something documented. I would say, I believe it's Section 10, as Chair Burns had mentioned, that if we are going to have this hybrid and virtual option, that board members strongly consider the recorded option. I think in order to be more efficient and to capture, what is discussed, it is probably best to just do written or typed minutes rather than simply having the recording, because the recording might also capture a lot of additional fluff that's not needed. And so that would be my recommendation, is just that they are written or typed minutes that are taken from the virtual meetings and the hybrid meetings.
Does anyone else have any discussions or reactions?
I just want to give a caveat about the recordings. They are public records. So if you're going to record them, they need to be stored and maintained pursuant to a records retention schedule. I haven't laid eyes on a CPRB records retention schedule. I don't know if ever. So I'm hoping one exists or it's within the DIG, but we need to see if these types of recordings fit nicely into a category that's already established. If not, they'll need to be maintained indefinitely until the Records Commission can add them onto the records retention schedule and put some time frame in place for retention. So I would just caution about that requirement.
Does anyone else have any suggestions, questions, or edits pertaining to the draft policy?
Great idea.
I wanted to also, if I may, speak about Section 8 for a moment. There's a provision towards the very bottom that says any 4 members of the board may require a meeting to be held fully in person for any specific agenda item. I had put a note in there for the board's consideration regarding, what number of board members would it take to compel a meeting in person? I don't know whether the board is comfortable with that number 4, or whether it wants to consider some percentage, majority vote or, whatever percentage it wants of the seated members, whether it wants to keep it at 4. The other concern would be that mostly addresses the regular meetings. It doesn't really address committee meetings, even though this entire policy addresses both regular meetings and committees. The number, most committees, if I'm correct, are 3. So I don't know whether you want me to add some additional language in there saying for purposes of committee meetings, at least, it must be unanimous to meet in person, or 2 of the 3 members can request that the committee meeting be in person or some percentage if the committees may grow larger, just for your consideration.
I'm wondering if we can say a majority for both the committees as well as the full board. Will that address that?
That's up to all of you. Whatever your preference is, I'll add it in. I mean, I guess the theory is, you don't want to have a small number of folks make the decision and control it for the entire board, but, there may be times when there's a particular case or issue where you feel like the meeting in person is more appropriate. And so, there's some at least mechanism in place for, like you said, a certain percentage, a majority of folks to say, hey, no, we need to have this meeting in person. It does, also, the language is interesting. It doesn't require like it be at an open meeting or a formal vote or anything. It could literally just be members just talking amongst themselves and then communicating it to the chair within the 48 hours.
Yeah, my only hesitation with saying the 4 members is because we know this board has fluctuated in size. And so I'm a little concerned with just doing that rather than the majority, then that, ensures that we have the most, members that are. in
Majority of
agreement.
seated members.
Correct.
Okay, and same for the committees.
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone have any issue with making an adjustment to Section 8 in that regard? Okay.
And are you going to make that, or would you like me to do it?
If you could do it,
I'm happy
Mr.
to do it.
Tobias, that
Yep,
would be
yep,
helpful.
Absolutely.
And then second, coming back to Section 10, what are everyone else's thoughts about recording versus written minutes? Do we want to excise that section and just submit written minutes?
Written minutes, correct,
Okay, I
yes.
see head nods. Okay.
Yes.
Could we do that as well, Mr. Tobias?
Say that one more time.
Take out Section 10, so then every subsequent section is going to move up in numbers, and everyone will be submitting written minutes from their meetings rather than recorded sessions.
No recordings.
No recordings.
I think that if you'll indulge, I can put some language in there saying that permissive may language in there, not requiring it, saying if the board chooses to record its meetings, otherwise minutes shall be taken.
Okay.
Is that okay? That way it's in there in case you want to do it moving forward.
Yeah, I think that would be fine.
Okay.
Okay. With those 2 language adjustments, does anyone want to suggest any other changes or make a motion to accept the policy with those adjustments?
I move that we accept the policies with the changes.
Okay. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Okay. Any other further discussions or questions? Okay. All in favor of adopting the virtual and hybrid meetings draft policy as our official policy, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
I will also give one additional caveat about notice. If you're going to have virtual meetings, as you're going to be using Teams, WebEx, Zoom, that you please get in touch with Ms. Brock in terms of making sure it's properly publicly noticed and that links and login credentials, if there are any, are properly supplied to the public so that they can view and or participate in the meeting, the committee meetings.
May I ask a question of the DIG? Are you able to share your WebEx with the board, or how will this work in terms of our use of, some platform for this?
I don't know the answer to that. That's things that will need to kind of be flushed out and figured out, because if you are going to have a virtual meeting where everyone will be participating from their homes, potentially, or workspaces, who's going to be the host of the meeting to be able to control that meeting?
Sure.
And then, if you're the host, then I know you're not doing the recordings now, but if you were to record, that responsibility. So, and then again, if it's coming from a personal account versus some type of,
I would,
Fair to say, each of you should have Columbus.gov emails. Do you have them? I know some of you prefer to use others. If you have them and you're using Outlook, there should be a WebEx platform that
Right.
you can use through your Columbus.gov.
Outlook, yep.
suggest using that.
Agreed.
Would it be possible to get that link where we could access the columbus.gov email addresses?
Yeah, that'd be great. Again, I mean, you gave it to us in the past.
And I know some of us stopped using them during the IT emergency of, was it 23 now, 2023? And never got fully back up online.
Exactly.
Thank you for that, and thank you to Attorney Tobias for drafting the policy for us, so we were not waiting around in the dark trying to do it ourselves. We appreciate it. All right, now to turn to any other process or procedure or policy review, is there anything that anyone would like to put forward for discussion or consideration? Okay. Hearing none, I'd like to draw your attention to December case assignments. They've been laid out by Ms. Brock. If anyone has any questions about those, please direct them both in your case reviews to the IG's office. Also, in the event that you are able to successfully navigate finding the WebEx scheduler, please ensure that you let Ms. Brock know of your January, or prep for your January committee meetings, and do so in time so that it can be publicized. Does anyone else have anything else for the good of the order?
When will we receive those cases?
This week, like you guys, I normally send them out this week after I'm done with the minutes. Whenever
It would be great, because with the holidays coming, yeah.
they're normally sent out this week,
No, I just-
unless I've fumbled, I don't think, you'll get them this week.
Great.
Okay?
I'm sorry, real quick. Pastor Jones and Miss Crystal, I'll get your columbus.gov email set up. And if you guys haven't been using it, you're probably gonna have to call me. That way you can contact DOT because you will be locked out.
All right, anything else for the good of the order? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
May I have a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor of adjourning, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion adjourned. Thank you all.